The mid-19th century was a crucible for the American soul, a time when the very definition of humanity and citizenship was contested on bloody fields. The air, thick with the scent of gunpowder and the raw, desperate cries of wounded men, was frequently punctuated by the roar of muskets and the clash of bayonets. Yet, amidst this chaotic symphony of war, a new, powerful chord was struck by men of courage, long denied basic human dignity and societal respect, as they charged forward not just into a battle, but into history. They were the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, African-American soldiers whose discipline, sacrifice, and unyielding bravery would forever redefine what it meant to fight and die for freedom. 1. A nation divided and an experiment in hope. Setting the stage, 1863. In the bleak landscape of 1863, the United States was a nation irrevocably torn apart by the Civil War. The conflict, now entering its third brutal year, had devolved into a grim war of attrition. Thousands upon thousands of men had already fallen, transforming once promising futures into mournful statistics. The Union, despite its vast resources, was in dire straits, and its relentless, crippling need for more soldiers became the strategic imperative of the hour. The previous year, President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had fundamentally transformed the war's objective. It moved the conflict from simply preserving the Union to actively dismantling the institution of slavery. This monumental declaration opened a door, albeit a heavy and fiercely resisted one, for African American men to directly participate in their own liberation and the salvation of the Union. Amid this profound moral and military struggle, a bold and to many radical experiment began, the creation of one of the first official African American regiments to serve in the United States Army, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry. This unit was not merely a military necessity, it was a potent political and psychological symbol. Southern leaders had declared that any black soldier captured would be sold into slavery or summarily executed, and their white officers would be tried for inciting servile insurrection. The very existence of the 54th was an act of defiance, a tangible repudiation of the racist doctrines underpinning the Confederacy. The formation of the regiment was orchestrated by Massachusetts Governor John A. Andrew, a staunch abolitionist. He and his allies understood that the success or failure of the 54th would either validate or eternally damn the concept of black soldiers. They needed a leader of integrity and unwavering commitment, someone who saw the profound significance of the mission beyond mere military strategy. Led by Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, a young, highly privileged white officer from a prominent Boston abolitionist family, the regiment found its moral anchor. Shaw, initially hesitant due to the political complexity, soon embraced his role with solemn dedication. He was acutely aware of both the stakes, the political future of African American citizenship, and the power of symbolism his regiment represented. The regiment was not filled with slaves fresh from the fields. It was carefully assembled from free black men and former slaves from across the northern states and even Canada. They came from diverse backgrounds, educated men, skilled tradesmen, farmers, and laborers. Their motivation was singular, burning with an intensity far exceeding the patriotic duty of their white counterparts. Each soldier carried more than a rifle. He carried the hopes of a people, the crushing weight of centuries of oppression, and the obligation of proving his intrinsic worth in a society that had systematically dehumanized and doubted him. This was a chance to earn citizenship not through petition, but through sacrifice. 2. The crucible of training and the battle against prejudice. The task of creating an elite fighting force from men who had never been trusted with arms was monumental.
Recruitment was not easy. While thousands were eager to join, the pervasive climate of prejudice created immense friction. Families worried desperately about the deadly risks, both from Confederate bullets and from the institutionalized racism of the Union Army itself, where they faced unequal pay and constant scorn from many white soldiers and officers. Communities debated the wisdom of trusting their men to a government that had only recently acknowledged their freedom. Yet, despite the formidable opposition, the men stepped forward, driven by a deep internalized determination and a profound desire to demonstrate a courage equal to or surpassing any white soldier in the ranks. They were quartered at Camp Meigs in Reedville, Massachusetts, and here the meticulous, grinding work of transformation began. The soldiers trained tirelessly, subjected to the same grueling demands as the best white regiments. They mastered the complex and often unforgiving handling of muskets, enduring long hours of target practice. They drilled endlessly in intricate formation movements, learning to move as a single disciplined body, responding instantly to the commands of their officers. Every muscle ache, every drop of sweat was a deliberate, necessary preparation for a war that was as much psychological as it was physical. Colonel Shaw demanded excellence, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. He and his officers understood that the 54th was under a microscope. The men of the 54th were acutely aware that every action would be scrutinized. A single act of cowardice, a moment of indiscipline, or a demonstrable failure in combat would be seized upon by critics and could reinforce prejudice, potentially dooming the future of African American military service. Conversely, acts of heroism and steadfastness could inspire generations and fundamentally shift the national conversation on equality. This pressure fostered a unique and powerful esprit de corps. They trained under the scorching sun and in bitter winds, pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. In the shared misery of the drill field and the barracks, they forged bonds of brotherhood that transcended their different origins. These were not just soldiers fighting for a flag, they were allies in a shared quest for dignity, and this mutual reliance would be the invisible force that carried them through the most dangerous moments of the war. The issue of unequal pay became the regiment's first internal battle for justice. While white soldiers were paid $13 per month plus a $3.50 clothing allowance, the black soldiers of the 54th were initially offered only $10 per month with $3 deducted for clothing. Shaw, outraged by this blatant discrimination, publicly stood with his men. The entire regiment famously refused to accept any pay at all for over a year, protesting the injustice until Congress finally rectified the disparity. This act of collective defiance demonstrated a courage that preceded the battlefield, showcasing their determination to fight for equality even within the Union lines. Imagine the scene. Dawn breaks over the camp, the air crisp with the chill of a New England morning. Tents flap rhythmically in the rising wind. Men are seen meticulously polishing rifles, ensuring the delicate mechanisms are flawless. They adjust their dark blue uniforms, the brass buttons gleaming like tiny promises. In the quiet moments before the day's intensity begins, they share quiet words of encouragement, a joke, a prayer, a moment of shared anxiety. Letters from home speak of love, longing, and most importantly, immense, overwhelming pride. Amid the camaraderie, there is a silent, steely resolve, a commitment to fight with honor, to stand tall, to survive, and above all, to make history. 4. The deployment and the shadow of Fort Wagner. As spring turned into the humid weight of summer, the 54th Massachusetts, now a cohesive, highly motivated unit, was finally ready for deployment. On May 28, 1863, they marched through the streets of Boston to the docks. The reception was electric. Tens of thousands of citizens, black and white, lined the streets, cheering, weeping, and shouting blessings. It was a massive public endorsement of the experiment. The march itself was a symbolic victory, a visual manifestation of a changing America. The regiment was ultimately deployed to South Carolina, the very birthplace of secession, to join the Union efforts against the Confederate holdstrong of Charleston. Their initial duties involved raids and garrison assignments, allowing them to acclimate to the brutal climate and the realities of skirmish warfare. However, their defining moment loomed large. The target was Fort Wagner, officially named Battery Wagner, a heavily fortified Confederate earthwork guarding the crucial entrance to Charleston Harbor. Wagner was a masterpiece of military engineering, built low on the sandspit of Morris Island, designed to absorb tremendous bombardment. It was defended by a deep, dry moat, sharpened palisades, and a garrison prepared to unleash a devastating crossfire on any approaching force. Taking Fort Wagner